The truth is, a lot of this violence has been coming from the police because it really shows you the threat that they're putting on this government is so profound and so effective that this is going to be something that's going to be probably pretty tough for them to quell without really making a message. At least or sending a message. That's, I think, really what they believe. And that's what their goal is. This is what they're trying to do with this action. And it's certainly coming across that because 5% of Chile's population protested recently. 1 million people out in the streets for one common cause. Really an insane show of force. We see that happening in Hong Kong right now. Other places in Latin America, there's a lot of civil unrest. Obviously, there has been some violence. That violence, though, very few and far between. Mostly peaceful protests. I'd say probably 80-90% peaceful. If I had to just kind of hazard a percent number on there, but that has unfortunately enabled, kind of provided a really ill-advised and just unjust fig leaf for the Piñera government to really crack down hard on these people with guns and all that stuff. It's really not fun to see for any of these people, but they're still out there. They're going strong and facing off really quite impressively with what we see in response from the Piñera government and the war that has been declared on these protesters. The truth is that this movement has received no mainstream media coverage here in the United States because it is directly contradictory to their worldview. The Wall Street Journal, very interestingly in my opinion, asks, quote, "The economy of Chile is doing well. So why are so many people taking to the streets?" That was the headline here. Market politics have been successful, so why are many people taking the streets? I do want to get into this because there are a lot of gems here. This is by Mary Anastasia O'Grady, talking about a recent big leftist victory, where the Peronist Alberto Fernandez and his vice presidential running mate, former President Cristina Kirchner, were expected to defeat the re-election of center-right President Mauricio Macri. So, primary results in August indicate the voters blame the incumbent for high inflation and rising costs of public services and anemic growth. So, right-wing populism, though, this is the key. Right-wing populism is not the only force ascendant, at least in Latin America, and this really worries a lot of these people. Here's where it gets interesting here. This is written, "Yet no one expects Argentina's center-right, if it loses, to go rampaging through streets, burning cars, stealing, blocking roads, and destroying public transportation. That's the kind of politics that is the specialty of the left." Ooh. It has been on display this month in Chile, where left-wing terrorists savaged Santiago and cities around the country with violence. Oh, wow. What a really, again, to anyone who's been there, I've been researching and hearing reports that the protests are in much, like 80-90% peaceful. The specific time I know for a fact that 1 million people were in the streets of Santiago protesting and other places all around the country. 5% of Chile's population, not all of them were left-wing terrorists. I got news for you. There's something else going on there. This happened in a nation that, as a newspaper, La Teresa reported on October 5th, has seen the poverty rate fall below 9%, down from 68% in 1990. Income inequality has also been coming down. By how much? I think there's a reason why you may not want to say. Income inequality in Chile is still the worst of any OECD country. There's that. But there's still plenty of work to do, but civilized societies settle questions of governments at the ballot box and through independent institutions, not with firebombs. Again, the effort really here to smear a protest movement as something that's violent, to decredit it and really take away its validity, when, again, these people, they will be ignored by Wall Street Journal opinion people at their own peril. Like, this policy, this direction is only going to be sustainable for so long. Like, this won't be a problem overseas for so long if we continue to go down this path. The uprising in Chile began on October 7th when groups of students in Santiago jumped subway turnstiles to protest a fare increase. In the days that followed, peaceful protests and further instances of lawlessness spread throughout the country. Peaceful protests and lawlessness, same thing pretty much. In the days that followed, on Saturday, over 1 million demonstrators poured in the streets of Santiago to voice grievances, reportedly everything from the high cost of living to income inequality and climate change. Yet it's unlikely that the eyes of the world would be on Chile if not for the perpetrators of violence who took advantage of the moment to wreak havoc and demand a new constitution. So, again, the kind of myth that the eyes of the world are on Chile, they're really not. Chile is largely being ignored, I think, for this reason, that it is a truly leftist protest. And that's, I think, the thing that a lot of people do miss about Chile. And this whole genre, really, of protests in general. Even as the country has grown richer than any of its neighbors by defending private property, the competition, and the rule of law, Chileans marinate in anti-capitalist propaganda. Again, like, there has to be something missing here. Like, the thing that she's, again, if I'm reading this, not knowing what I've just told you about about life for Chileans, like, you have to think, like, why is this? Why are they being this way? Like, they're so attracted to this anti-capitalist propaganda, whatever the case may be, if things are going so well. There has to be another side of the story here. And there really is. The Chilean right has largely abandoned its obligation to engage in the battle of ideas in the public square. Oh, God. Piñera isn't an economic liberal and makes no attempts to defend the morality of the market. He hasn't reversed his anti-growth policies of his predecessor, socialist Michel Bachelet. Chileans have pounded on one side of the story, have one side of the story pounded into their heads. As living standards rise, so do expectations. When reality doesn't keep up, the ground is fertile for socialists to plow. So, yeah, pretty much the thing she's trying to say here is they are not going right-wing enough. The violence has another explanation. To chalk it up to spontaneity requires suspension of disbelief. Oh, here we get the sinister explanation. Is George Soros funding the Chilean protests? Oh my God! No, I think what's more likely here, having not read the article except for just the headline earlier today and wanting to talk about this on the show, I'm going to go with the possibility of she's going to blame a coordination of sinister activists on social media. Let's see. It takes a lot of money to move this number of people and engage in this level of violence. The explosive devices used, he said, were far more sophisticated than Molotov cocktails. Foreign subversives are... Oh, I didn't expect that. Foreign subversives are suspected of playing a key role, with Cuba and Venezuela at the top of the list. The Sao Paulo Forum, a group of hard-left socialists put together by Fidel Castro in 1990 after the fall of the Berlin Wall, espouses this radicalism. Oh no, we are. This is George Soros, Venezuela, Cuba. Like, they're going for harder stuff than just George Soros here. But still, the thing is, it is really interesting to see some of this stuff happen. I mean, the question is, so why are people taking the streets? It's because that elites, really, I think in all societies, intentionally or unintentionally, they really remain woefully unaware of the problem faced by everyday people until they are so crushed and so beaten down by one tax hike or one fare raise or one privatization or one tax cut for the rich until they just can't take it anymore. And it's just not acceptable. So, I mean, the U.S. media and people really should pay attention for obviously opposing reasons for what's happening here. It provides a blueprint for what will happen under a kind of neoliberal hell state where everything kind of just gets turned more and more progressively towards business in such a big way, and workers or the average Chilean person is just not able to keep up. And if that happens for long enough, we will see something similar here. Like, I mean, if we're on that same case, like, the conditions are ripe enough there will be something similar. And that's why I think this is something worth paying attention to, because, I mean, I don't see really a lot of dissimilarity between the breeding ground and the conditions here. Like a lot of neoliberalism, a lot of the same tax cuts, a lot of the same efforts of privatization. And if anything, we're even further along and more further to the right than these people. So that is definitely something to keep in mind, and really an interesting way. And it's definitely worth watching this story in terms of what could happen when a truly leftist protest comes to power. So, yeah, we'll definitely keep you posted on this on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, because it is a very developing story. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Red Alert. Next week on the show, why is California burning? We'll investigate.